Advanced Heroquest Playing Aids Dungeon Generator. One of the really fun and exciting parts of playing games of Advanced Heroquest is its random dungeon generation. This slice of the unknown dominates the atmosphere of the game and, coupled with the progression the heroes can make in terms of stats and equipment, and in our game's skills too, keeps myself and many others coming back for more. It brings the game into the same stratosphere as that crown jewel of Games Workshop specialist games, Mordheim. However, the dungeon generation in the original box game was not the most efficient system. I wanted to remedy that. The rest of this video is split into the following sections, detailing how I went about it. Number 1. Why did I make the dungeon generation gaming aid? Number 2. What principles did I use to design it? Number 3. How does it work? Number 4. How do you make it, and where can I get these cards for free? And number 5. What's next? Dungeon generation involves a lot of dice rolling. Firstly, when you reach a corner or junction, you need to roll a die for the length of any corridors that lead off from it. Then, you roll another pair of dice to see if the corridor contains anything, and then yet another pair of dice to see how the corridor ends. That's 5 d12s you're rolling, just for a single corridor. If you're at a T-junction, it's 10. A similar thing occurs when you open a door. First, you roll a die for the room type. Then, depending on that, another die to see what's in the room. Then, if you're using the optional HeroQuest furniture rules, then there is another die to roll. And, after all that, you also need to roll another die for the number of additional doors that are in the room. For some, this is off-putting. For others, a joy. I'm somewhere in between. However, I'm sure one thing we can agree on is it takes time. And this is the crux of this video. How do we keep this random dungeon generation, but speed things up so as it's not biting into our precious game time to some sort of excessive degree? Fellow Advanced Heroquest Games Master, Meta Thinker Extraordinaire, and fellow Oldhammer Dungeoneer Fetz Braun drew my attention to this particular area. He had already devised a great way to tackle the problem, which he detailed in a short PDF. There's a link to this in the video's description, and I encourage you to check it out. Essentially though, in lieu of rolling dice, he had come up with a card deck system representing the different features of the dungeon that you simply flip when a new piece of dungeon needs to be generated. He had based these on the tables in the rulebook, but then modified the frequency of certain cards and added additional combinations and features to them as per the needs of his gaming group. I love the whole mechanic and the way he had modified the dungeon generation to suit both his needs and constraints. However, although initially I intended to simply adopt his custom deck, on reflection I thought it might be more useful to recreate the original rulebook's generation system wholesale. That way, anyone, not just myself, could give the system a try without changing any of the dynamics of the original game, and then, if they wish, they could change it later. The dungeon generation via a deck of cards is also a very interesting design space that has a lot of potential to be explored. We shall touch on this later. So, the first step was to analyse the dice probabilities on the original Advanced Heroquest tables. Advanced Heroquest unusually uses 12-sided dice, sometimes called D12s, meaning that many of the probabilities we have all internalised as primarily 6-sided dice gamers, or D6 gamers, shift to different values. For example, I doubt there is anyone who does not know that the most likely outcome of rolling 2 6-sided dice is 7. But when rolling 2 12-sided dice, this obviously shifts to 13. When 2 6-sided dice are rolled, there are 36 potential combinations. A 1 and a 1, a 1 and a 2, a 1 and a 3, and so on. The 6 faces on one die are multiplied by the 6 faces on the other die. But when rolling 2 12-sided dice, there are 144 potential combinations, with the 12 faces on one die being multiplied by the 12 faces on the other. The dungeon generation charts in Advanced Heroquest use either a single 12-sided die or a pair of 12-sided dice, with each value being assigned a result. I began by working out the likelihood of each result coming up, both in raw numbers and then as a percentage. I decided to create 4 card decks to recreate the tables for corridors, features, corridor endings and rooms, and included the room door numbers probabilities on the room cards. I then fairly arbitrarily decided that each deck was going to be 20 cards. Obviously, to accurately recreate rolling 2 d12s you would need a deck of 144 cards for each deck, but the idea of making that many individual cards was in no way appealing. 80 in total seemed a more manageable number, although this itself is not insignificant. It was then simply a matter of assigning a card for every 5.26% chunk of each of the features on any given table. Sometimes this required rounding up, and at other times rounding down. I generally decided in which direction to go based on the likelihood of encountering such a feature in the dungeon, rather than doggedly following the usual mathematical rules of thumb. Okay, so why 5.26% and not 5%? You're probably asking. And rightly so. Fetz Braun's dungeon generator had included a key card that I wanted to preserve. The shuffle card. When drawn, this card caused all the cards in the deck, both drawn and those yet to be drawn, to be shuffled back into the deck, and then the top card flipped. This was essential. It also meant that I was making decks of 19 cards plus 1 shuffle card. Thus, each card really had a weighting of just over 5 and a little bit %. Let's look at an example to more clearly explain this process. To make the Passage Ends deck, I calculated out the following. T-junctions would be the result of rolling the 2 dice 42 out of 144 rolls, or 29% of the time. So I assigned 6 cards, 1 for each 5.26%, rounding down. Dead ends occur 25 out of 144 rolls, or 17% of the time, so I assigned them 3 cards. Both right and left turns occur 27 out of 145 times, or 19% each, so they each got 4 cards. The stairs down occur 13 out of 144 times, or 9%. But I wanted it to be rare, so I only assigned 1 card to it. The same with the stairs out, which comes up 12 out of 144 rolls, or 8% of the time. This too only got 1 card. Finally, I added in the shuffle card. This is the process I went through for both the corridor endings and the corridor features tables. which both use 2d12s. The corridor length table and room types table both only use a d12, so they were simpler to do, but I still went through the same process. With the rooms, I also added in the doors. Normally, you roll for a room and its contents first, and then, lastly, roll another d12 to see how many additional doors are in the room. But, as there are only 3 options, 2 doors, 1 door, or no doors, the die is effectively acting as a d3, a 3-sided dice. Each of the room cards for hazard rooms, layers, and quest rooms only had 3 cards, according to my calculations. So, for each, I made each one of these cards have a different door number. The most common room type are normal rooms, and there were 10 of these cards in the deck. I ever so slightly put my hand on the scale here, and assigned 4 cards to the rooms with 1 door, as I probably felt these were the most likely room for you to encounter. And for the rooms with no doors and 2 doors, I only assigned 3 cards. Okay, that's all the mathematics out of the way. Phew, thanks for your patience. Just like in the original rulebook, there are 3 different things that are generated when a new piece of dungeon is revealed, at a corner or a junction. In the original game, you roll a single d12 and then consult the table and rulebook for the corridor length. Next, you roll a pair of d12s and then consult the table and the rulebook for any features in the corridor. And then finally, you roll another pair of d12s and, you guessed it, consult the table in the rulebook to see how the corridor ends. Using the cards, you simply flip the top 3 cards. Here's an example. Duralian descends the stairs and moves to the T-junction ahead of him. Normally, he'd be rolling a die for the first corridor, then a pair of features, then another pair for the ending, and then the whole process again for the corridor opposite. With the cards, we simply flip the top 3 cards, giving us a single corridor, a dead end, and a door. Finished. For the second corridor, we do the same again, but this time getting a corridor of 2 lengths long, a shuffle card, and no special features. There is 1 shuffle card in each deck. When it comes up, you take all the cards, put them back in the deck, and shuffle them, before revealing the top card as usual. This time, we got a right-hand corner. The process for doing rooms uses a single deck. When a door is opened, you simply flip the top card. As you can see in our example, we get a normal room with 1 door. Finished. So as you can see, apart from the need to shuffle 1 in every 20 draws, the process is quite quick and easy. I've made a PDF of all the cards. There's a link in the video description to the file on our Facebook page. They have been sized exactly, so all you need to do is print them off and then fold each piece of paper in half from top to bottom. So long as you're neat, the backs and fronts will line up exactly. Then, you have a few options for turning them into actual cards, but a couple of easy ones are: number 1, apply paper glue to the backs of both sides, put a piece of card between them, and then glue and cut them out. 2, if you've got a laminator, glue the back and front to each other, and then laminate. This is what we did. As you can see, each of the 4 decks can be differentiated by their back artwork, each chosen from the original HeroQuest book. In my opinion, most of the cards are self-explanatory, apart from perhaps this one in the Features deck. This represents Wandering Monsters. This kind of deck of cards system for generating the dungeon actually opens up a lot of design space, or perhaps better, redesign space for the game. For us, the next step is to recreate decks that simulate alternate dungeon generation tables, such as those found in the Advanced Heroquest adventure, The Troll Slayer's Oath by Ken Rolston, or in The Eyes of Chaos by Carl Sargent. Moving forwards from that, I think creating custom decks for different settings too could be a lot of fun. Okay, well, feel free to give these cards a try, and any feedback would be greatly appreciated. As ever, enjoy your gaming.